The hard thing is I'm talking about this and no one's going to fucking do anything. I've been saying this for so long. I talk about process all the time. I've talked about these things. I want you to go do this. I want a movement of people who are like, man, I'm doing stacking now because you've talked about it endlessly for years. And nobody does it unless they pay me to do it for them.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I'm
Yo, fam, it's Frizzy Dizzy Friday. So you know what time it is. Welcome back. Welcome in. To those of you who know what time it is, we appreciate you. And to those of you who don't, we're going to appreciate you. You're going to stick around. You're going to enjoy this. This will be your new favorite podcast. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time to the Best Damn Agency Podcast, your place for unfiltered, unscripted, no bullshit conversation about all things digital agency ownership, life, and of course, agency sales. I'm just the guy with the questions. To those of you who forgot, there's no script here. There's just like a few questions written down, but there is a man who exists who has all the answers. Whether you like them or not, they're emphatically always empirically true, proven by science. His name, ladies and gentlemen, Joey Gilkey.
No, it's Jizzy Jizz Joey.
Jizzy J.
Dude, what was that? Frizzy Dizzy Friday.
All right,
cool.
So
I love it.
Honestly, though, here's what happens, and he'll get a kick out of this, is like 50 episodes in to the original Best Damn Agency Podcast.
Yes.
Chris Dreyer hit me up, and he was like, dude, you're so predictable. He's like, I love you, but your intro's the same every time. You say the same thing. What? I forget what it was. It's like, what's up? It's Friday. Welcome back to the Best Damn Agency. It was just that every time. And so I want to intro it with the value prop, which is the unfiltered, unscripted, no bullshit conversation, yada, yada. But I got to front into that with something a little bit spicy, a little bit creative.
For a little Frizzy Dizzy. Love it. Hey, man.
Maybe somebody laughed.
I'm here for it.
Oh, man. Well, you are, as we teased out last time, in the shitstorm, in the middle of the shitstorm, the beautiful shitstorm that is acquiring a company and integrating them with your pre-existing business. How are you feeling?
My head is spinning still, for sure.
It's still attached to your body. It was last week, we clarified.
Yeah, but my cock's gone. No,
Where did it go? Who took it?
In my body. Wow, that was weird. No, it's been good, but it's hard because you have they have amazing systems for certain things, and they're better than ours, and so we should. For example, we're on Monday.com, they're on Monday.com. Perfect. You would think that'd be great. They built their Monday very different than we built ours. Theirs is more intricate to the overall operations, and a lot more automations and things have been built. And so it would be a complete clusterfuck to move that and transfer it over to our Monday, where ours is a little bit more simple and streamlined and still fairly elementary. But it's what we use every day. And so now we have to transition our Monday into theirs and take over ownership there and all that. On top of that,
enter Nikolai.
On top of that, you've got their heavy Salesforce, we're heavy HubSpot. And we both use them, but there's no sense in paying for both of them at the highest rate. So how do we consolidate certain things? Do we integrate? There's just all those different things. On top of that, there's just a accounts payable, accounts receivable process that they're used to that we're not, or that we're used to and they're not. And so
pretty much all the processes are
yes. The product, still amazing, still incredible. It's going to be great. The future is very bright. The integration, which I knew would be a pain in the ass first couple of weeks, is just that, a pain in the ass.
Well, you're doing a great job. So
thanks.
Didn't know if you needed to hear that, but from my vantage point, it's going swimmingly, which means that where you're screaming on the inside, you're calm and cool and collected on the outside.
Hell yeah,
nice.
bro.
So.
It's all about the low lows, not highs, not having too many of either.
I have never had a low or a high in my entire life.
That's
for
also
the last
very
6
true.
minutes. I had a realization this morning as I don't know, man, I was just thinking about business, I was thinking about different companies and industries and what we do, and as I see Apex evolve into what I think is the best version of the company that you set out to build, I am also realizing at the same time that sales is just a really hard fucking problem to solve. It is the hardest problem. I don't know if there is a harder problem.
It is the hardest problem.
Why is it so hard, and why did you choose it?
I didn't choose it. It chose me.
It's your destiny.
Let's see. Well, why is it so hard is because it's interruptive in nature. And humans don't like interruptions or changes. And so therefore it is entirely based around that principle of you need to interrupt and change. Especially outbound specifically, but all sales in general requires you to make a change of some sort. Change in how you think, change in how you buy, whatever. So that's why it's hard. And because people don't like to change, and because a lot of sales is done digitally or virtually, they have to use platforms and channels and different tools and softwares. And unfortunately, those platforms and channels and tools and softwares make their money in different ways. And so you're always battling the tool to get you in front of someone that gets your message to them on that platform, but the platform that they receive that message wants to optimize their user base for the best experience. Well, the best experience is not to be spammed by somebody with a phone, with an email, with a LinkedIn message, or even direct mail for that matter. And so they create process to block the salespeople, whereas salespeople have to create process to get around blocks. And so there's two elements to it. There's the interruptive and influential part that you have to conduct in sales when you get in front of a prospect. But there's now the barrier that didn't used to be there, which is the platforms, channels, tools, and softwares that are kind of the medium or the bridge in between that's an obstacle. So not only do you have to convince the person that you're trying to get in front of that it's worth getting in front of, but you're having to figure out a way around the platform to get that message going in the first place.
All right. Here is an original thought. Maybe, probably not. Tell me if you like it or not. So, okay. Sales versus ops delivery. The speed to exposure because of changing external forces is just exponentially higher on the sales side, but you will get found out either way, right? So my thought is the climate for sales is always changing, how you can get through gatekeepers or get to decision makers, always changing, the tactics and all those things you just talked about. Delivery, I think especially now with AI and algorithms and platforms and systems that are always changing, you have to be adaptive. But I think that it's like you're exposed immediately on the sales side because the results just dry up. On the delivery side, there's a lag time of how long your client is willing to put up with shitty work until they'll fire you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does.
They're both facing the same issue. Sales just has it in their face every day, all day.
Yeah, 100%.
Always changing.
Yeah, I mean, product people are dealing with people post-sale. Now you got to keep them and make them happy. Deliver on what you sold them. Optimize based off of things.
What was the real quick? Yeah. What was the distinction that was made in one of our last mastermind calls around retention? So it was like product plus relationships. Retention versus relationship versus service plus relationship equals retention. And so that's an interesting thought too. Is even so on the retention side, you can actually keep people around and not face that same drop off as long as you're delivering a white glove, high level type of service where you're on a first name basis with all your clients. You know, they know you got the deep relationship. That doesn't really exist in sales as much unless you're doing like high level account management, managing a book of businesses.
Yeah, it's the relationship. It can be somewhat artificial, but you can create it somewhat. Like giftology is a good example. Of like, hey, we can develop trust pretty quick, and there can be some affinity. But deep relationship is pretty challenging unless it's a really long sales cycle, and you've developed deep relationship with some buyers, but maybe not the key buyer or all the key buyers. That's where it gets a little challenging for sure. Does not exist the same.
So as Apex evolves, and with bringing on PRL, you're building in a lot of ways like a team of all-stars, right? And so we've talked about this at various parts of the podcast, like paying the premium for premium talent. And I think that that's something that you are now committed to doing. And I was saying before we jumped on this call, it's like with Ryan and Justin, and then you, we've got on our team the 2 best cold callers and the best closer that I know. Now, obviously, you don't want to sit in those seats forever. You want to replace yourselves there, but that's pretty cool. And to have them leading the teams that will do that too, it's a huge boon for us.
Massive.
So we got a super team. Who would you add? If you could add one person to our super team of employees, and obviously
an actual
Matt
individual.
Yeah, it's an actual individual, or maybe it's an avatar. I don't know, but we've got Matt, who we just brought on. Corey's kicking ass as fractional leadership VPs of sales.
Yeah,
dude, even our admins are freaking killers,
ballers.
But who would you bring on?
Well, I did truly, I need a fucking baller operations person, and I don't know who that. I've never had good luck with that ever. I've had former partners that I've had to buy out because they weren't good fits or not good at the job that I thought they were going to be good at. And so, like, there's those issues where it's like I've been terrible at hiring operations, and I have not put myself in enough shoes. Who would I really? I would never do this ever, but like I want to. Well, this is a true never situation. Rachel, the COO for Fully Accountable, Vinny Fisher, who's my mentor, good friend, brother. I want her. If I can clone her and put her as my COO, I want that. But I would never do that to Vinny, nor would Rachel ever go. But I'm saying I want someone like that.
Oh, dude, they can help us find that person.
Maybe. I'll ask Vinny, actually.
Yeah, you should.
Let's figure out how to give me a Rachel.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I didn't necessarily think that this would be a real answer that would get any traction, but there we go. There's an actual takeaway from that part of the conversation.
But I don't know a person that I could actually put on my team for that role.
Well, but no, you basically just named the person. It's just one that's impossible, so we'll go find her clone if that person exists, which is great.
I'm sure they exist out there.
Let's talk debauchery. So,
okay. Yes.
Hard left turn. It doesn't have to be a debaucherous answer. It probably actually isn't. It's just there might be some conspiracy in here. Okay. One, what is the biggest problem in the world today? And then I want to follow that with, so maybe as you're thinking through that answer or verbally processing, if you were czar for a day, I was going to say president, but a lot of times I don't think the president actually
fucking banana republic, dude.
Any levers, right? If you were czar for a day, what would you change? But let's start with, what is the biggest problem?
Great question. The biggest problem, I think, truly is...
Yes.
I think it's probably financial elites. Okay. I think it's the people that have more money than God. So it's a weird line where like I'm a huge believer in capitalism and meritocracy, but I think that there's also a weird moral line that can get crossed beyond a certain point. I don't think BlackRock accumulates $7 trillion under management without doing shady ass shit.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't. I don't think you get to trillions without stepping on throats and doing the wrong thing, even if it looks like the right thing to the world. So I think I would probably, if I'm looking worldwide, I would probably try to create less of a financial or wealth monopoly. Because if you look at it, Patrick Bet-David it was either Patrick Bet-David or someone else made a really good point where he talked about, if you look at...
I can guarantee you it either was Patrick Bet-David or the field.
Yes. Astute point.
Okay.
It was. He was talking about this on Rogan. So he talked about, if you look at the, I believe it's the S&P 500, 88% of the companies in the S&P 500 have majority shareholder is either BlackRock, Vanguard, or State Street.
Yep.
So that means that those three companies have a 88% majority share ownership of the S&P 500. Now, if you look at monopoly law, you can't have more than 50% ownership or market share in a particular category. And so I think that we need to kind of figure out how do we create some sort of anti-monopoly situation with like the extreme like $1 trillion funds.
I watched that episode. It was interesting too. He said, "You know how I know they don't enforce this rule? It's like, look at Apple. 60% of Americans own smartphones or own Apple iPhones, and they won't touch it.
No, they're not touching it.
They want the Apple money."
Correct. So I think that's, if I just shoot from the hip, top problem would be to somehow dissolve these massive companies or fractionalize them down. The next layer down, I would say, if I'm looking strictly at the United States, would be something that Vivek Ramaswamy is talking about, which is he would either fractionalize or completely demolish and destroy the FBI, the Department of Education, CIA, a lot of those, and take power away from them. Basically get rid of one of the 4 now branches that don't actually create checks and balances. There needs to be 3.
Yeah. Yeah, he was talking about, you got terms for everything in all those branches of government, except for a lot of these 3-letter agencies. FBI directors, been there 40 years. Like, you just all these legacy people that have been there since Reagan, right? Enforcing the same types of policies that are outdated or just corrupt.
Yeah.
Let me, real quick, so you've got this, like, upper tier, right? And then you've also got, like, maybe there's a middle tier, middle class, but then there's just, like, the bottom, or even most of the middle class. I think a lot of the problems stem from the fact that, let's say that the monopolies were dissolved, the regular people, most of America, would not step up to take back any of the ground that has been ceded. Yep. So I think that there's like an empowering or a enabling mindset, whether they would call it that or not, that most of Americans are guilty of, where you want to just force feed genetically modified processed shit down our throats and make us fat? Well, we're happy to eat McDonald's food every day, or not cook at all every day, feed that to our kids every day. We're happy to be fat. We're happy to be lazy. We're happy to make, just above minimum wage. We're happy to suck the government teat and take all these benefits that we don't necessarily deserve, right? Like, all of those things we're happy to do because it's easy. And so I think even if you dissolve the financial elites, there's got to be this uprising or groundswell of more people who are willing to do the hard work of extreme ownership.
Yep, I think so. I think that, if I was the czar for a day.
Oh, answer this question. Let's do it.
I'd probably have a laundry list of things. I list a few things.
Yes.
All right. One thing I would get rid of is I would dissolve the ability to lobby. Not lobby like you can petition or whatever. I mean, like, true. I would make it so that no politicians can take above a certain number or dollar figure in donations, period. And
that used to be true.
Yes. And I would put an auditing team that literally just spends time on the politicians.
Take the 80,000 IRS agents that were hired and put them on,
I know,
Washington.
Yes. And so I think, because they need to become true public servants. I would change our voting system. I would make it all. What? I would make it all paper ballots require identification, and go back to hand counting and quality assurance processes in place. And I would put extreme laws around those who are counting and everyone involved. Around, like, hey, if you tamper with this, you will literally go to prison the rest of your life. Not legit. Like, we have to, otherwise we're going to spiral into. It is. We don't have a republic anymore. And so I would do that. If I was the czar, this is U.S. based stuff, so I would definitely create some regulation. I would dissolve a lot of regulation. I would probably try to interfere a little bit more with, like, NATO, in the EU. Probably do some of that. There's a lot of shit that I would probably do. My world would be perfect.
2028.
No. Sorry. I have no desire to be a puppet.
You can be a czar on your farm.
Yeah,
How's that sound?
that's right.
Okay, well, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Maybe one day we'll unpack that further, and I'll give you a heads up so you can actually like line them out. But that's pretty damn good for zero prep work on if you could be czar for a day. I appreciate those answers.
Oh, I'd also make the death penalty to pedophiles
Okay, that would
by firing
probably
squad.
change a lot. Okay,
I actually might bring back public hanging.
oh, shit.
I'm not kidding. For that particular crime, anything that's a sex crime against a child,
Yep.
anything that's like child pornography. Oh, I'd make the porn industry illegal.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely
You'd
do that.
save a lot of.
I would make it
men
illegal
from-
to advertise on porn sites, which would delete a lot of their income. And I'd force I'd let no web hosting companies allow for pornography.
Dude,
It would
that's
still
great.
happen, but it would be much more minimal.
Oh man, you've thought about this.
Well,
good.
it's just all been thoughts that are coming to the surface now.
If I was czar for a day,
Yeah, what would you do?
I'd create a community for 7 and 8 figure digital agency CEOs. One that's not all fluff and bullshit. One that's not several leeches gleaning from the generosity of a few. One that's not hung on the hat of washed up has-been agency owners who inflate their past escapades and accomplishments, but one that's built on the backs of a community of invested men, leaders who want to grow and improve not only themselves, but those who they choose to link arms with. They want to be leaders in their family, in their home, in their business. They don't want to settle. People that push back against the establishment, that push back against mediocrity.
You thought about this? Sounds like you thought about it.
If I was czar for a day, I would build not just a mastermind, not just an agency mastermind, but the best damn agency mastermind.
Wow.
If that interests you, good news. It's been built. It exists, and we're not willing to settle for being anything less. I got about 32 members. They're all kicking ass, and they all fall into the category of what I just laid out. So check us out, bestdamnmastermind.com. If you want to come hang out with us in Palm Springs, we still got 2 spots for some guests, bestdamnmastermind.com/retreats. We'd love to see you there. All right. That was spontaneous, by the way. I think that might be one of my better.
That was better than
spontaneous.
anything I've ever done. Yeah.
All right, let's talk sales. We primed the pump for this last week. We have not talked process in a long time. And so I want to maybe caveat with this. Like, I think that a long time ago, we put a lot more emphasis on process first.
Okay.
Now we are putting a lot more emphasis on strategy first, message market fit first, and then building processes or embedding processes into the sales operation only after you've figured those things out, because building them prior to that could be foolish depending on what you put in place. So maybe has your thought on process changed at all? But I know that to you it's still integral to your success. So how do you think about process now? And then maybe we'll get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Yes, I do think about process quite a bit. I have to. You're right. So I think where we went wrong with sales-driven agency prior to Apex Revenue was that I think for a long time we started the company with strategy being the main helm, and then we created process in the back end of that. And we wouldn't have maybe lined it out like I do nowadays with the 6 steps to outbound thing. But I think we did that inherently because that's what you're supposed to do. And I think as we tried to scale, we tried to just say, let's just create productized process because it's pretty much the same thing across the board.
Yep.
And we lose all context, and you then try to change your process over time based on what you find out, which is basically a strategic thing. And so we moved back to being strategy led and then services supported or process supported. And so I'm now convinced that 100%, you're not going to move me from that of building sales process can help, but it's not going to move the needle massively for the company if you don't have the other things right first, which is your strategy, your message market fit, channel viability, that kind of stuff. That's why we built outbound R&D.
So let's say you nail that. Let's say somehow you just nail that to the floor, and then you're thinking for some kind of knowledge base of SOPs and processes that need documented out. What would be some of the kind of marquee cornerstone processes that you need to think for?
Well, let's just speak in the realm of outbound first, or we'll speak in left of deal, right of deal, just because that's former language we've used before. The overarching principle is simple scales, and we know this, complex fails. And so you have to always keep that frame, or else this all blows up.
Yeah.
Because what we learn is that, like, if something becomes I was literally talking to someone today because we're building this like baller machine for research. It's sick. But I was talking to him, and we were talking about, like, hey, if this gets too complicated to pull off and it becomes too manual in certain parts, it won't happen. And so we need to figure out how to streamline this, eliminate some steps, or automate certain things that are not, that can be automated. Otherwise, this will become complex, and I'd rather this be a simple, like, hey, get the Google Sheet URL, put it into this very specific form. That form then has a bunch of automations that pull the form, automatically open the spreadsheet, finds all the details, and send it into the system. Like, that's better than, like, hey, you got to export this and move this over to this, and then this you have to manually segment out and pull it here. So I say all that to say, overarching principle, keep it simple. If it's complex, it will not be repeated. So simple scales, complex fails. To the original question, there's left of deal and there's right of deal. Left of deal is all micro processes that go into getting an opportunity on the table, right? What we would call, like, enters the pipeline. Usually that point is the first time appointment, is kind of the hinge point between left of deal and right of deal. Left of deal is everything left of or before. Right of deal is everything from that point, that hinge point, the meeting or the pipeline entrance through closed and won. So when I'm thinking about processing, I got to think about it in those two macros. And then there's processes inside of those that help you get to the most optimal outcome for, let's say, left of deal. So an example would be, especially if you're doing outbound, data. Like, what is your data process to actually build high quality lists that actually map to your TAM, your total addressable market, that actually helps you identify accounts, identify contacts, find the right contact information, get that information sound and segmented ideally, and then into the hands of your team. Like, that in and of itself is a beast process that you need to figure out how to simplify. That's something that we're really working through right now, because it's something that we now offer to clients. So data is the first thing. The second thing is people, right? So how do you actually get your people to then leverage that data and use it in a scalable, systematic way? And so how do you hire people? How do you train them? How do you onboard them to then go actually take the data and go use it? So I'd say data is a process. I'd say training your people and accountability for your people is a process. How do you take that data and go to market with it? So what's your process for using the CRM or your database or whatever to then, what's the process from CRM data is cleaned and enriched and whatever into your sales engagement platform, if you want to call it that. I hate SEPs nowadays, but where are you going to actually make your dials, make your emails, send your LinkedIn messages, so on. That's got to be a process you document. And then from a process perspective, when you get someone on the hook or interested, what is the process to getting them into the first time appointment? So what is a booking process? Something we've now introduced is, what is an activation process? Someone who isn't ready to book, but they're interested. Stack 3, for those who follow me long enough and know the stacking methodology. How do you get them to actually show up for the meeting? Right? Like, all these are different processes you should be doing. The hard thing is, I'm talking about this and no one's going to fucking do anything. Everyone who's listening to this, you aren't going to do jack shit with this. And so I'm talking to basically a blurry face crowd of people who won't do anything. So go fuck yourself. Because here's the thing. I've been saying this for so long. I talk about process all the time. I've talked about these things. And nobody does it unless they pay me to do it for them. And that's just the problem that we're in. I want you to go do this. I want a movement of people who are like, man, I'm doing stacking now because you've talked about it endlessly for years, or whatever. Like Dan Charles is probably the only person that listens who actually does anything with what we talk about.
Great job, Dan.
Way to go,
Great
Dan.
job, man.
But most people, Chris Dreyer might be another example because he does listen. We also have phone calls, so he probably listens more on the phone calls. But the hard part is I'm talking about all these things, but you're not going to go do it. Like if I can tell you right now, okay, here's what I would do if I was you. Data process. I would go by getrev.ai and spend a fuck ton on identifying your total addressable market. You won't do it because I just told you it's going to cost a fuck ton. So that already eliminates 95% of people. 5% that are left, you're going to go buy it. Great. Then what I would do is I would take the accounts that are identified through getrev.ai and or ocean.io is a similar tool. And I would then have to go identify the personas inside of that. That's a manual task. You could automate it or at least get 60% the way there by uploading that account list into like an Apollo or Zoom Info, and it's going to spit out contacts based on that upload. About 60% of them. Well, there's still going to be 40% left, and so how do you get the other 40% of the accounts you just paid for? Well, you have a manual team that can do that, and you have them go on LinkedIn, you have them go on websites, company websites, and you have them actually input manually the people, whether it's one persona or it's 5 personas in each account. Then what you do is you send that to Rightbound. Rightbound then is going to enrich the data to give you the best quality contact data, right? So then you have a process for not just getting the right accounts, but you get the right contacts and you get the right contact information that is enriched. Then you take that data and you send it to Phone Ready Leads, which I now own. Thank you. I'll take your money and I will help you. And then you get that data segmented into here's who is most likely to answer the phone. Here is the people who are likely to not ever answer the phone, and so therefore use the phone with P1s or the people who answer. Do not use the phones with the other people and just do email and social. And then from there, you can upload that into your CRM, and then you can upload that into your sales engagement platform, and you can go do outreach. But none of you are going to spend the money or the time doing it.
Dude, what's so funny is, 1, you're spot on. 2, we just ran an R&D project for somebody who we got great results for, and they will probably become a client, not like a retainer-based client. But they came back with the question, I sent it to you, of like, hey, we need the playbook for how you guys did all of this work in R&D.
Literally
Basically,
clip this and send it to them. And say, this is one of 15.
Because there's processes after that of how we do the outreach and how we segment the outcomes and how we do follow-ups, like you said, with activations versus book meetings. All that exists. So I just sent the guy a video saying, hey, I would send you the playbook, but it's worthless to you. I'll do it. I'll still do it. I'm going to send this to him, but it's worthless to you.
Flip it and say, hey, this was not directed at you, but this is literally, and this is unprompted.
Yep, I will. All right, so this is funny because when I said earlier, we solve a problem that's just hard as shit to solve, which is sales.
And that was just data.
Yeah, that's one small, tiny little piece. It's an important piece, but it's a tiny little piece. But for the longest time, and still, people have an option, right? They have the option of trying to solve this problem themselves. They have the option of paying somebody to do it. Mm-hmm. And then once they pay somebody to do it, you have all kinds of options because, how much you're going to spend and who are you going to bring on, and hire a VP of sales. You're going to bring on a consulting company like us. But dude, do it yourself isn't really even an option for 99% of people. They're just going to flounder. And it's funny too because then you look at the people like the Helium SEOs, people that we know over there who've built a big sales team and they've grown to 8 figures and they're kicking ass, right? There's very few of those. There are the 1% of agencies who've successfully built their own sales team and have scaled their agency and are growing fast as shit, but they're a unicorn.
Yep.
So so my question then is, this problem's hard as shit to solve. Yeah. 1% of the 100 have solved this on their own. What is everybody else to do? Do they just throw their hands and go home?
So the hard part of what I'm explaining is a very efficient, highly profitable. This is a data process that we know works. It gets us the most amount of your actual market. It gets us the most lookalike audience of who you actually need to go after. Most people are going to go sign up for the big promised data providers, the Zoom Infos, the Seamless.ai's, the Apollo.ios, the whatever. and they're going to get data, and 30% of that list that they paid nothing for, let's just say nothing in air quotes, let's just say a couple $100, couple $1,000 a month, that 30% of that list is going to be not the right fit account. Okay, so you just wasted that. But you're still going to call on them because you don't know that until you do that, right? So you're going to waste time and energy there. Another 30% of that list that might be the right fit is going to be bad data, right? Because those platforms make promises, but their algorithms don't keep up with changes, or they have the right name but the wrong person, right? Like a John Smith over here is not the same as the John Smith here, and you have someone else's mobile number versus the real one. On top of that, each one of those is going to give you 2 to 6 phone numbers per person, per company.
Which one do you call?
Which one do you call? If there's 5 of them, which one do you call? Well, maybe it's mobile, maybe it's direct, maybe it's corporate direct. Maybe it's this random other number over here. I don't know what it is, but it is. But let's just say you get that wrong on the first attempt, most of the time. Well, then you've wasted 50% of your dials because, it's like on average it takes, I don't get to the right number until the third dial of this person, or the right number until the fifth dial. Sometimes I get the first dial, but overall, I'm wasting dials just trying to find the right number. And so that's what everyone else is dealing with, which makes you highly inefficient, highly unprofitable. And it puts a lot more stress on the performance of the rep and the performance of the AE who's closing, because all the other front-loaded process is bullshit and it's broken. And you can still get there by sheer force, but you're going to have to overcome a lot more downstream obstacles because you couldn't fix this issue on the front stream. So
you're going to cobble it together, and everything else is going to be shit downstream.
And I used to fall into that process until I truly looked into the numbers and the profitability of it. And I was like, yeah, you can scale up a sales team, but it's not going to be profitable.
Good luck to the rest of you.
Like even Tim, I love Tim at Helium, but I know for a fact, and Tim and I are talking now about PRL. I know for a fact I can show up to Tim's and I can make his sales team 3 times more efficient. Give me a week and give me your current data and I'll fix it. But people got to learn that.
A little bit doom and gloom, but there is optimism. There's hope on the horizon. Just call Joey, pay him all the money, or keep doing what you're doing. So let's turn to something slightly more optimistic. Let's talk about closing.
It's cheaper to pay me a lot of money, just so we're all aware.
Yeah, you will save a lot of money and make a lot of money.
And
downstream.
Speed. You will ramp 12 months faster.
All right, closers.
Okay.
They're important. They make the monies. Let's talk about this first. What's the archetype of a closer? Paint a picture for me of who that person is that's actually successful in that role.
Well, I'll say this. I think that we have made the cushiest job in the world. I think SaaS especially has done this, where it's like you have business development reps and sales development reps. You have now sales engineers in between who do all the custom scoping and really think through all the technical stuff. And then you have the cushy closer who comes in and is like, all right, so let's package this thing up and blah, blah, blah. That's never what your organization needs to have, especially if you're an agency. You can't afford to have that type of team. Your margins just won't allow for it. That said, closer, I would say the absolute number one, do not pass go unless they prove that this is possible and it's in their repertoire, is they need the ability to just have an ungodly amount of ability to do follow-up. I would say most of the deals that don't close could have closed. Not most, because that would put you in a win rate that's impossible to achieve. But I would say a lot of the deals that you thought were good and you could close them and they never did, you probably could have actually closed them. You just didn't follow up.
Dang.
And so if you just have the ability to really stay on it and stay top of mind, stay valuable, challenge people to actually come to a decision. I think that's one gift I have is I'll just tell you straight to your face, you're not making big boy decisions.
Yeah.
One interesting thing about buying PRL was that there's a lot of interesting clients that are all kind of custom scoped and doesn't fit our future. I get to walk in there with the swinging dick and just be like, hey guys, I don't need your business. And so if you need the data, this is the rules you're going to play under. This is the accounts receivable that process that we follow, and your accounts payable is going to need to bend to that. And that's how it's going to be. And we're not doing custom stuff. We're not doing special requests. If you want to do a special request, it's going to cost a fucking premium. So like, I think you need to have that ability to where you can challenge the buyer on how they buy. So a couple things. One, follow up till you get a hard get out of my face, and be valuable while you do it. The second is being willing to challenge. We talked about challenger sale, like teach, tailor, take control. Like I still subscribe to that to this day, and I probably always will. Like you need to be able to really challenge the buyer to buy differently, either buy differently in terms of like how they make their decision, or buy differently in terms of the timing in which they typically make a decision. Oftentimes people take too long because they just they're not challenged to move faster. And so that's one thing. Outside of that, I would say, and this kind of falls underneath that teach, tailor, take control aspect, is you need to be able to, and I talked about this before, like intuition has to kick in, right? You need to have the reps and the intuition to understand, like, okay, based on how they're acting or responding, this is then how I should challenge, or this is then how I should deploy empathy, or this is then how I should ask more questions, or this is then when I should back off, right? Like, hey, like they're falling off a cliff and I can actually pull them back off the ledge if I just back off a little bit and give them some space. So I think those are the top three. I would say, I guess the fourth one is ambition, but I don't beat that dead horse. But follow up, challenger ability, and the ability to deploy empathy in the conversation. Not empathy, intuition.
When we talk about those are attributes, that is the archetype, that is the person. But like from archetype perspective, there's all these kind of old school, I don't know if they're even old school, they might still be true, but like aged categories of what a closer kind of looks like. So you've got like the athlete who's the hyper competitive, or do people are gonna like this?
Or
well, you even got though like I know CEOs who like they'll only hire pretty women to be their closers because they can keep people on the call.
I think that's what Chris Schreier should hire at Rankings, but he won't listen to me.
Well, yeah, who he sells to too.
Exactly. Only person I would suggest that to.
But okay, let's talk about the sports one in particular. Guy that I follow on LinkedIn a while back, like he's like, hey, this is a total misnomer. Like there's no correlation. But you've hired a shit ton of account execs and closers. Like, do you think that the athletic background is either a requirement or even a boon?
I'd certainly love it. So if I have two people who look identical but one's an athlete, I'm taking the athlete every time.
Okay.
Every time.
Even if it was like swimming?
Yeah. I mean, anyone who can get in the ring, figuratively, and compete against other individuals and has a drive about them, especially if they're a college athlete. Like if you've got to the point where you competed and outperformed 90, what is it? I think it's only 1% make it to college or something like that.
Yeah, it's some crazy number.
Look at us, dude. You and I are just a 1% statistic.
What's funny is when somebody asks me, hey, I played ball. What'd you play? I'm like, football. And they're like, really? That's
you're smaller.
Literally every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
They don't do that with me. I'm still large. But that's funny now. I was like, oh, what'd you play? Like D-line or something? Tight end.
Yeah, hell of like a nose tackle in like a three-man front where the D ends are huge and you're just trying to penetrate. You're great at.
I'm good at penetrating. Yeah. So I'd say, I love an athlete. I love anyone who's got that competitive nature, and that was the fourth attribute. I guess I could have put at the top, but anyone who's got that proven track record of like just I'm ambitious and I have drive, and I like people who are like really internally motivated. I think picking people who are externally motivated is a good short-term solution. I think finding people who are internally motivated is a long-term solution. Right? Externally meaning like externally would be, they're just flashy. Like they want the car, they want the house, they want the whatever, right? And so they make decisions because they know if I make a big paycheck, I get the thing. Well, you and I both know that materials don't last super long. And so if that's what has to be present to drive them, then that will eventually slow down. Whereas the person who's internally motivated, let's just say someone who's like super, family motivated, right? Well, your family's never going away for the most part. Hopefully it doesn't. And so that's always going to be a motivation for you. And then the other part is if they have like an internal, like, I want to see how good I can be. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, I want to pursue excellence in my life. And, I am my biggest competition. Is who I am today is my biggest competition to who I'm going to be tomorrow. That's what I'm looking for.
It's great. You said this earlier. I think this is something that people could have a takeaway from too. The cushy job, right? That role that like you should not build into your agency. So to clarify, should you expect your closer to source their own deals or source some of their own deals?
Yeah, 100%. I think they need to source their own deals.
Okay.
Now, I do think that there's an incentive down the road for an AE that they don't have to if they're just overperforming over everybody else. There can be less of an expectation of self-sourcing, and because you have a high close rate and because you keep hitting quota, I'm just going to give you more of the leads that come in from other people.
Yeah.
And so, it's weird because, again, like I'm a constantly evolving creature in the sales world because I have to be, because I've got my hand or my finger on the pulse more than most. I do think the SDR account executive model, as it has historically existed, does not work anymore. It's not profitable. You shouldn't do it. However, I do think that again, not even a plug as much as just reality. It's why I bought them. It's just like, I think a PRL equipped SDR, leaner team, but better data and a better strategy and a better message with a smaller AE team, that can still work very well. I think that's the benefit of now hiring Apex to do your SDR work, because we now have the SDR as a service. Because we can do it. We have all the data processes. We build the list for you. We score everything. Like, all that goes through our process, and then our SDR goes out and does the market talks. I think that model can work, but I think a better model is having something like that where it's a really enabled SDR who's not tech enabled in the sense of like they have all this tech stack, but just like enabled with good data, good message, good strategy.
Yeah.
I think that coupled with an AE who's fielding the leads that come in, but then also spends 20% of their time, what would you call it? Self-sourcing?
Self-sourcing. Yeah.
Self-sourcing deals. I think it's a powerful combination, especially if you use kind of the approach we do with activations, where it's like, hey, we've talked about it, like, there's booked meetings, which are awesome. That is typically what people's North Star is. But now there's activated leads, which are the people who aren't ready for the booked call. But I think those leads should not stay with the SDR. They should be passed up to the AE to self-source through the activated leads.
So one clear takeaway from that is the only way to not just chew through your profitability and have an overstaffed or an overly bloated sales org and be an agency is to have hyper efficient people in those roles.
Yeah. Which requires well-defined, simple process to repeat. Yeah.
And some enablement, not necessarily in terms of like tools, but just that you said it already, supercharging their data or the outcomes that they're able to drive. So that you're basically, rather than solving the problem by overstaffing and overinflating, you are solving the problem by squeezing productivity out of each and every one of the people on that team.
I'm gonna do this for anyone who actually applies shit. I'm gonna literally give away the sauce right now.
Uh-oh.
Here's what I would do. I'd have an SDR team and an account executive team. I would equip the SDR team with phone-ready leads. What that will do is you will send the list, or they can build it. We'll charge you for that, but whatever. You build the list. You send it to PRL. Let's just say to 1,000 contacts. And you score that data. You say you get about 30% back that we know answer the phone for sure. Your SDRs on the phone only use the phone on those people. The 600 and something that are left, your SDRs only send account-based touch points on email and social, meaning they have to do deeper research on those people, and they have to do the phone. But they're only doing the phone on what we call P1s, people who we know answer. Everyone who doesn't answer, don't ever touch the phone for them because they'll never answer. But you can do email and social, or you can do voicemail drops, but don't actually sit there on the phone and call them, right? I would do that. Now, when they are doing lead generation, there are going to be people who will not take the booked meeting. It's usually 20 to 30% of the people that you talk to. So if you, let's say you talk to 100 people, 20 to 30 of those will be activated but not booked. Maybe 10% will be booked. So you're going to get 10 meetings out of the 100 conversations, but then there's 20 to 30 people who they're not ready for a meeting yet. So what do you do with them? Well, the strategy then is to create something around activation. What is something that you can leave them with that is extremely valuable, that you can give them for free, that provides some indoctrination to what you do, but also just props up the brand? They weren't ready for a booked call anyways, so why not? So build a webinar, build an open office thing they can always come to, build a micro course that solves a very specific problem for them, and give away some of the sauce. Give it to those 20 to 30 people, and then those 20 to 30 people are now going to be pushed to the account executive. And the account executive's job is now to self-source out of those 20 to 30 people that have now been given this thing. And when you do that, you're going to notice that the 20 to 30 people are probably going to far outpace and close at a higher clip than the 10 people that you actually booked when you were trying to book a call, right? And so you're still getting the bookings, but now you have a whole other channel, which is the activated leads. And your account executive now needs to work that, not the SDR. Now, if that person ghosts and doesn't respond over time, send them back down to the SDR team and they can call on them again later. But you do that, and if you build that process, like that's the juice right there.
It's the sauce, some might say.
That's the sauce. But no one's going to do it.
The sauce has been given away, and Dan Charles will implement. So, Dan, looking forward.
Go get it, Dan.
That's great. Well,
Chris would probably go and implement it if he wasn't locked into a super long contract with someone else.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there one day.
You'll get there, buddy.
One way or another.
Can't wait to hang out in Chicago.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be awesome.
Speaking of, when are you going to
All
Chicago?
right, guys.
When are you coming in?
I am not. I'll meet you in South Bend because it doesn't make sense for the other way around.
Yeah, I forgot you have
All
the
right.
Rainbow Convention or whatever you're doing. Makes sense.
Hey, stop it. Joey came down. Joey brought the hammer today. He came in swinging.
Just ticked off today, okay? Guys,
man, he's got
the
one
good thing is
listen.
there's more value when I'm pissed off, so you're welcome.
Go do something with it. Listen to him. Go apply the sauce. Regardless of whether you do or not, we appreciate you. We just want you to get better. We want you to take ground and not just stay stuck. So thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for being here with us every Friday. Rate, review, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. 33 subscribers, Joey, on the new channel. So we are, man, blowing up.
The new channel is on fleek.
A little slow.
the kids
A little
used
slow.
to
It's
say.
all right. But we'll keep doing it. Podcast is going well. The audio is doing well. But check us out on YouTube. And as always, we'll see you here next Friday for another episode of the Best Damn Agency Podcast. Until then, deuces.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah.